Hey guys, welcome to another Life Success Factors video. Today we're going to be talking about how you can start managing your money better, okay? This will be the first in a series of videos, guys, and I'll also be writing up a detailed blog post to go with this video. But today we're going to be focusing on part one, which is about identifying your income and your expenses. And guys, I know that right now it might be a very uncertain time, and you may be facing some unfortunate news. You might have lost your job, you may be experiencing a reduction in your income, but guys, now is the exact time where you can start thinking about your money and how you can start managing it better. So here at Life Success Factors, I want to equip you with the tools to ensure that you've got financial security, okay? So you can work towards that financial security and that financial independence so that you don't need to trade your time for money, okay? That's the end goal. That's where we all want to get to. Today's video, as I said, guys, will be focusing on getting that started on, developing a budget. Now, a budget is something that not a lot of us stick to. I know I've struggled with sticking to a budget in the past, but I truly believe that if you've got an idea about where how much money you've got coming in every month and how much money is going out, you're well on your way towards achieving financial independence, guys. Okay, so we do talk about retiring early on this channel, and we talk about how you can equip yourself with the tools to succeed in every area of your life. Okay, money is one area of your life where I think we've got a lot more control than we think or give ourselves credit for. Okay, so let's get into today's video. Just to start off, guys, this is just a bit of a beginner's guide. So look, if you are a little bit more advanced, then I'll be doing a few more advanced videos for you guys out there that are thinking about how you can use some of your surplus cash at the end of the month, and in terms of what sort of investments that you can consider. And I will say, guys, I'm not a financial professional, so everything that I'm saying in this video, please consult your own financial advisor, okay, and professional advisors. To make sure that whatever you do is tailored for your situation, okay? But with that out of the way, guys, let's get into today's video, right? And the first thing I want to focus on is one half of the budgeting equation, and that's income, right? Now, income is basically all of the money that you've got coming in every month, right? Now, for most of us, this will essentially comprise 1, 2, maybe 3 components, but for most of us, it's actually just one component. And a lot of us are employees, so we've got a day job, we've got a 9 to 5. You may be a cook, you may be you might work at a fast food restaurant, you may be an accountant, you may be an engineer. But chances are that you work for a company or you work for someone else, and they provide you with a steady paycheck, right? And I suppose that's the first component of our income equation, and that's your salary, right? Now, it's very important to be able to identify how much money you've got coming in. And I'm assuming that most of you guys obviously have a look at your bank statements, so you know how much you're getting paid. Obviously, the amount the gross amount that you get at the end of the month, you've got to take your taxes out of it and any other outgoings directly from your paycheck, but you should have that information available to you. Okay, guys, the second most, popular form of income is actually, and I've listed it down here, but it's real estate or rent. Now, in Australia, there are a lot of people who own investment properties, and this is a form of income, right? So at the end of the month or at the start of the month or whenever in the month, your tenant will be paying you a certain amount of money, and that will be counted as your rent. Now, it's very important to understand that the rent that you charge your tenant may not necessarily all come to you. And that's because some of that money might go to, let's say, your property manager who manages the tenant and your property on your behalf, and obviously then they need to get paid. So they most likely get paid out of that rental amount. And that amount is approximately, in Australia, in my experience, and it may be different for you, but approximately 4 to 5% of the monthly rent. Okay, so it's always good to understand how much rent you've got coming in, because that forms the income picture for us. Now, the next, I suppose, most popular form of income is stocks, and in particular, dividends. So if you hold a basket of stocks, say you've got shares in the Commonwealth Bank or ANZ or BHP, these companies pay, at the very least, a half-yearly dividend, or a quarterly dividend, or perhaps even a yearly dividend. Now, a dividend isn't always guaranteed, guys, with stocks. That's one of the things that you've got to understand about any stocks or investments that you have. Your returns aren't guaranteed, but on average, they pay at least one dividend a year. And it also depends on the stock. Some stocks may not pay any dividends at all. So you've just got to understand, for the stocks that you do hold, how much do you get in dividends at the end of the month, or at the every half a year, or every year. And that information should come to you if the stocks are in your name. So guys, keep that in mind, because that'll also form part of the income picture. The next thing, I suppose, or the next item of income that you may receive is a coupon payment from a bond. Now, this is not that common. I don't know a lot of people who own bonds themselves, but if you do, then you most likely are paid a monthly or a 6 monthly or a yearly coupon payment. So similar to that of a dividend, but a bond is a little bit, and obviously this is generalization, but bonds are a little bit more consistent in the payment that you do receive, the interest payment, or the coupon, as they say, than something like a stock, which has a little bit more of a sort of a risk return type trade-off. Now, the one that I'm really interested in is, or the income source, is the side hustle. Now, guys, I strongly suggest that you guys consider what sort of side hustle you can have on the side that will be able to supplement your income, your salary. Now, you may already have this, right? So you may have a 9 to 5, you may be, let's say, an accountant or a doctor or an engineer, whatever it is, but you might be a really great photographer, and you might shoot people's weddings on the weekend, or you might be really great with your hands, and you might be a really great a lot about cars, and so you're in your spare time you fix people's cars, right? So this is another example of an income source, and that's probably one that I'd recommend for people on my channel that you consider in terms of building up that income picture. But it's also, if you do have an income source like that, it's good to document how much you bring in on a monthly basis, right? I've got a couple more here down here. We've got things like inheritance. Now, a lot of people don't get this sort of income source, and if they do, it's sort of the once-off. So it's not, I suppose, high on my list of probable income sources. And the other thing is, if you're a younger viewer, then you might receive some pocket money in addition to any other money that you might earn from a part-time job. But whatever it is, guys, it's important to you to document how much of your income that you've got coming in at the end of the month, right? So that's great. So that's one half of our budgeting equation. So understanding how much money we've got coming in at the end of the month. Now, the key to budgeting is knowing where your money goes, right? As a very famous investor said, it doesn't matter how much you earn, it's how much you keep at the end of the day, right? And the thing that has the greatest influence on how much you get to keep at the end of the day are your expenses, right? So where does your money go at the end of the day? What do you spend your money on? And guys, I know that for a lot of us, and I know this was true for myself, understanding where my money went at the end of the day was very confusing. And I must admit, I didn't keep a very good track of what I spent my money on. Obviously, I did use a debit card or a transaction card, which I could go through and see what I had in terms of my monthly expenses, but I never actually took the time to document this and understand how much money was going out the door at the end of every month. All right. So to help you guys understand what makes this half of the budgeting equation, your expenses, I've listed some of the more common expense items, right? And I like to start with some of your needs, some of the things that you actually need to live, right? We all need to eat. So one of the things that you need to understand is, well, how much money do you spend on groceries? Groceries usually are a large portion of how much we spend every month, because we need to eat on a daily basis, and sometimes our tastes, our preferences dictate the amount that we spend on groceries. The other thing is a rent or a mortgage. So we obviously need somewhere to live, and unless you own your property outright, or unless you, let's say, you still live at home, you will have rent to pay rent, or you might have a mortgage on a property that you're living in. So this should be pretty clear for you guys. Hopefully you know how much money you're spending on your rent and your mortgage every month. Now, there are ways that you can minimize these two expenses, and I'll do another video on this, but with rent, it's usually a little bit more difficult, I suppose, to try and negotiate reductions in your rent, but it's not unheard of. And if you are a good tenant, and if you are following the rules of the property and making sure that you take care of your landlord's property, then you can make a case to your property manager for your landlord to consider a reduction in your rent, or at the very least keeping your rent pretty consistent year on year, or as you sort of roll over your lease. Now, with a mortgage, it's in this current environment where interest rates are at record lows, there are more opportunities to try and negotiate your mortgage payment, or in particular your interest rate, with your bank or your financial institution, and that's probably one sort of lever that is a lot easier for us to pull when it comes to reining in our expenses at the end of the month. Now, this has two benefits, right? So one, you're reducing the amount of interest that you pay, which is great, and that reduces your expenses, but it actually accelerates your ability to pay off your mortgage. So if you reduce your interest payment, okay, but you keep your repayment, the total repayment, the same, if you are on a principal and interest repayment schedule, then that gives you the opportunity to pay more off of your loan every month, or every period that you paid that amount. So I would encourage you to speak to your financial advisor and also your bank, just to understand what that means for you and what opportunities there are for you to reduce that amount. But guys, at the end of the day, understanding how much you're paying in terms of your housing costs is very important, because usually that forms the largest portion of our outgoings at the end of the month. Okay. Now, obviously we've covered our living expenses such as groceries and rent, or supposed living costs. But the other portion of that is also how you get around. So unless you walk everywhere, guys, or unless you take a scooter or your bike everywhere you go, it's likely that you also have expenses when it comes to transporting yourself from your home, your place of residence, or to your school or your place of work. So understanding how much you spend, let's say, on public transport. Do you buy a bus ticket every day? Do you spend money to buy a ticket for the train. Perhaps you perhaps you take Ubers to your destination, or lifts, or whatever have you. But it's important to understand how much you're spending on that every month. That's obviously, catching public transport's usually cheaper than owning and driving your own car or taking rideshare services. So understanding how much you're spending on that transport is also important in terms of that the expenses and your outgoings at the end of every month. Now, you might own a car and you might have a loan out on it, a car loan. It's important to understand how much you're spending on your car loan, and that should be pretty clear because that usually comes out of your account every month, or however often you pay that off. If you own your car outright, you might have some other expenses associated with owning a car, such as maintenance, oil changes, petrol, or if there's something that you want to buy for your car. If you're really into your cars, you might like to modify it, but understanding how much money you spend on that item for your car is important, and usually that's more of a discretionary spend, guys. So it's not a sort of a need, it's a sort of a nice to have. But in terms of the car itself, the petrol, it's probably closer to a need, where if you do need your car to get around, then that's probably higher in terms of the money that you need to spend to be able to do the things or to live the lifestyle that you want. And also it helps in generating this income, because if you can't drive your car to your job, well then obviously you can't generate an income. So guys, I'd encourage you to have a think about that, how much money you spend on your car, and in terms of this whole expenses equation, and talking about how we can optimize that amount. That might be an opportunity there for you to consider. Now we're starting to get more into our sort of wants, and the classical wants are, how often do you eat out? Do you like to get takeaway? Do you like to go to really nice restaurants, really fancy restaurants? And I must admit, I do like to eat out once in a while, and I do sort of see it as a bit of a reward for working hard. But it's important to do that in moderation, guys, because generally it's a lot more expensive to eat out than it is to cook your own food. So it's actually quite key to understand how much you spend on eating out. And from what I've seen with the clients that I've coached, usually this amount is the largest portion of their budget, quite shockingly. Understand how much you're spending on that eating out amount, because it can influence how much you're able to save at the end of the day, quite significantly, right? The other sort of discretionary spend is entertainment. So you might like to go out and watch a movie, or you might like to go out and have a drink at a bar or a pub. That's something that's sort of classed as entertainment. You might like to subscribe to some streaming services such as Netflix or Spotify or YouTube, or whatever have you. Those are sort of discretionary spends. They're not necessarily required, but sometimes it does sort of give you a bit of pleasure. So some of us do have those streaming services. Now, if you're looking to save a little bit more money, guys, that's probably one that's that is easy to sort of cut out of our expenses. And I'd encourage you, if you are looking to save a little bit more money, to consider whether you actually need some of those streaming services, because if you have more than one, the cost can add up every month, and especially if you have things such as pay TV, which in Australia is very expensive, and I'm not sure what the cost is in the US, but I'd imagine that it would be a similar amount. So if there are ways that you can substitute some of these services for some free services where they might be supported by ads, then I'd encourage you to sort of have a think about that. Personally, I have one or two of these, but I make sure that they fit within my budget profile, and I don't sort of tack on more services that I don't need. So guys, those are the main sort of areas of expenses, and hopefully that's sort of given you an idea of how you can start categorizing not only your expenses, but your income as well. And this is sort of the first part in terms of developing that budget, right, for yourself, is understanding where your money is coming from and where your money is going, right? The third part of this is obviously the amount that you get to save at the end of every month. And the key to financial freedom and the key to, I suppose, retiring early is actually what you do with that amount that you save every month. And we'll cover this in another video, but I just wanted to get you guys across the two main components of income and expenses in terms of understanding how much money you've got coming in, but also how much money you've got going out. And then the surplus, it's about capturing that. It's about building up a bit of an emergency fund for a rainy day. So you lose your job, you've got some money there so that you're not scrambling to say pay your bills and put food on the table, right? And in another video, we'll cover what you can do with some of those savings that you may not necessarily need. You may have a good emergency fund, and then you can start considering together with your licensed financial professional what you can do in terms of investing that money so that it can start generating a return for you and you can build up your asset base, okay? Because at the end of the day, guys, the key to wealth is actually building up your asset base and making your money work for you instead of you working for your money, right? So that's what we teach here at Life Success Factors. It's all about thinking smart, doing the smart thing rather than the hard thing. And usually I suppose the easy thing would be to sort of just spend as much money as you want every month without sort of regard for saving and building up your investments. So I encourage you guys to put in the hard yards now, because in 5, 10, 15 years time, you'll be able to sort of enjoy the lifestyle that you've created and the ability to do what you want instead of needing to sort of work for that money to put food on the table and a roof over your head, but also to give you that freedom to, if you do want to work, you can still work, but you're not relying on that paycheck, right? So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video today. This will be the first in a series, as I said. If you like this video, I'd appreciate if you leave a comment down below. Leave me a like, subscribe to my channel, I would really appreciate it. And I'd also appreciate if you share this video with anyone who you think needs to understand the basics of budgeting and about their income and also their expenses. So guys, this is Craig from Life Success Factors signing out. Go and check out my blog over at lifesuccessfactors.com. I'll have a more detailed write-up of all of the topics that I've covered here today. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.